I was born in Stillwater, a small town on the edge of a lake of the same name in Minnesota. In 1958, I was 19 years old, working as a mechanic's assistant in a workshop near the railroad. My childhood was filled with the smell of oil, pine, and ice. Winters here are long, white, and cold as metal. People are not afraid of snow, only the sound of ice cracking underfoot. Every year, when February comes, the lake freezes so thickly that you can set up a tent in the middle of it. It's fishing season. Everyone goes to the lake, not for the fish, but for the quiet. In that space, people can sit for hours listening to the wind, the sound of fishing lines, the movement of water under the ice, and listening to themselves. My brother Bill is one of those people. He's 5 years older than me, served in the Navy, and has a habit of not talking much. His best friend, Charlie Dawson, was the complete opposite, loud, playful, and had a laugh that sounded like metal on metal. That winter, they invited me to Stillwater Lake. "Come with me this time, Frank. We'll pitch a tent and stay the night. The weather's calm, the water's deep, and the fish will bite." I agreed, believing there was nothing to fear on the frozen lake. We set out at 6 in the morning on the 3rd of March 1958. It was still dark, the sun hadn't quite risen, and the air was thick as glass. The sound of the sleds on the snow was long, dry, and clear. From a distance, the lake looked like a giant mirror reflecting the pale blue of the sky. There were no birds, no waves, just faint swirls of wind blowing across it. Bill pulled the sled with his gear: rods, a folding tent, a battery-powered radio, a few cans of frozen bait fish, a kerosene lamp, and coffee. Charlie whistled as he walked, tapping his heels as he stepped on the ice to hear the echo. "Hear that, Frank? It's like someone's answering me down here." I smiled, but actually I felt a little cold inside. We set up camp near the middle of the lake, about half a kilometer from shore. Charlie drilled 2 large holes in the ice. Bill tied the fishing line down. The smell of engine oil and cigarette smoke mixed with the cold steam. I lit the kerosene stove and turned on the radio to listen to the weather. The static continued, then was cut off by the announcer's voice. "Stillwater forecast. Light north wind, -18, slightly reduced pressure. Warning: avoid the central area of the lake due to a new crack that formed last week." Bill chuckled. "It's all a scare. They say that every year." By noon, silver light was spreading across the ice. The sun had dimmed, and the wind had died down. The air seemed to be completely filled with sound. Charlie was the first to notice. He whispered, "Hear that? Nothing. No wind, no ice, no fish." I just nodded. Then I heard something else, a distant metallic tapping, echoing from the bottom of the lake. 3 beats. A pause. Then 3 more. Bill said someone was drilling the ice in the distance, but the sound was different. It echoed from below, uneven, like the sound of steel pipes. I looked down into the hole in the ice. The water was inky black, unruffled. Charlie bent down, his ear close to the ice. "There's something down here," he said. "Like..." We listened, very faintly but clearly, a voice speaking, broken through the ice. "No, down." Bill swore, jerking the radio back on. The static hissed, then suddenly a hoarse, muffled voice, as if from a long distance. "No, down, no one down." Then, silence. The radio went dead, even though the battery was full. I remember seeing the red light on the power button flash and disappear. Charlie looked at me, his mouth moving, but he couldn't say anything. As the afternoon wore on, the sky turned steel gray. The wind returned, colder, carrying the smell of metal and old snow. We decided to reel in early, but when Bill pulled the line up, the end felt like the bait was gone. He pulled harder, and the line went down instead of up, as if someone below was holding it back. He pulled again, and the ice around the hole shook slightly. I yelled, "Let it go." Bill let go of the line and backed away. The hole began to bubble, and the water darkened to a blackish black. The three of us looked at each other. No one spoke. Around 5 o'clock, the fog cleared. The lake was swallowed by a white mist. Visibility was reduced to a few meters. Charlie went out to check the tent stakes, but didn't come back. 10 minutes, 20 minutes. Bill turned on the flashlight, called out. No answer. I put on my jacket, the flashlight illuminating only a thin line of mist. Beneath my feet, the ice crackled. Then I heard something far away like metal tapping on ice. 3 times, then a muffled scream. When we found Charlie, he was lying on his back in the middle of the ice, about 20 meters from the tent. His eyes were wide open, his lips were pale, his clothes were dry. There was a round, black water stain on his collar. He was breathing, but his eyes were blind. We dragged him into the tent and covered him with a blanket. After a while, he woke up and whispered, "I see them, down there." "Where down?" Bill asked. Charlie pointed to the floor. "Under the ice. They're moving." I remember the way he said it calmly, like he was talking. Bill didn't sleep that night. I woke up in the middle of the night to the sound of the radio playing again. The indicator light was dim, the speaker was crackling, and then the man's voice from the day before. Charlie cowered, hoarsely shouting, "Turn it off." Bill threw the radio out, but before it hit the ground, the sound continued, lingering in the air. The water's about to open. The next morning, Charlie was gone. The tent flap was open, the wind was blowing, and his footprints in the snow led straight to the lake. The footprints stopped abruptly beside a round hole in the ice as big as a well cap. There was no sign of turning back. I looked down, the water was smooth. My face was blurred in my reflection. The rescue team searched for 3 days. They pulled Charlie's body up on the 4th day, about 30 meters from the collapse. He was still clutching the fishing line. His eyes were open. In his pocket, they found the radio, our radio, completely dry, with new batteries. The police had written accident. They didn't ask any more questions. Bill and I buried Charlie on the edge of the lake, near the pine trees. When we lowered the coffin, the radio in my pocket was lit. No one had touched it. Only once did a hoarse voice come out. "Nobody down there." After the funeral, Bill was quiet. He couldn't sleep, couldn't eat. A month later, he was found sitting alone in the middle of the lake, in the middle of the night, next to a new hole in the ice. It was -25 degrees. He was frozen, eyes open, looking down. Beside him was a broken radio. I left Stillwater that spring. I went to Chicago, worked as a mechanic, got married, had 2 children. I never went back to the lake for decades. But some nights, in the middle of the noisy city, I would hear the click, click, click coming from somewhere. 3 regular beats like metal tapping on ice. I'm 83 years old. I tell this story not to scare anyone, but to say, sometimes there are places that aren't just places. They're cracks in the world, and if you happen to be standing in one of them, you'll hear things you shouldn't. Last night, when I turned on my old radio, it picked up a strange frequency. No music, no news, just a hoarse, distant, broken voice, repeating, "The water is about to open." I turned it off, but the sound was still in my head, like wind through thin ice that I knew well. It had never quite solidified. "Stay. The water is about to open." They say there are lakes that retain the memories of those who have fallen into them. I didn't believe it until I went fishing at Ravens Point. The lake is located in the woods of northern Ontario, almost 50 miles from the nearest town. There is no paved road, only a dirt path leading in, and it is blocked by snow all winter. I have fished there dozens of times since my youth. The water is deep, cold, and a distinctive deep blue when you look down. You can't see the bottom, just a fading light. In September 2015, two old friends, Neil and Hunter, planned a late-season fishing trip with me. We wanted to try our luck before the lake froze. Neil was a retired high school teacher, quiet and calm. Hunter was the opposite, a former firefighter, big and jovial, always laughing so loudly that he could drown out the wind. The three of us considered Ravens Point our own no noise, no tourists, no cell phone reception. We arrived at the lake on Saturday morning. The sky was overcast. The wind was weak. The water was flat and still like a steel mirror. Hunter joked that if you threw a rock in it, it would take 5 minutes to sink. Neil just laughed and said, "Don't say that. Water has ears." That statement sounded strange, but later I realized it was literally true. We had a small wooden boat, a 3-seater with an old engine. As we left the shore, I looked at my watch. 10:12 a.m. Hunter was driving. I was in the middle. Neil was in the bow. No one said much. The sound of the engine mixed with the distant wind, repeating like a heartbeat. We stopped in the middle of the lake, dropped anchor, and prepared our rods. At first, the fish were biting steadily. I clearly remember the small pop sound of the line vibrating in the air. Hunter laughed loudly, holding the bass up. "See, the lake is still as good as ever," he said. Neil quietly removed the bait, his eyes never leaving the water. I asked why, and he whispered, "I saw something moving at the bottom, like a light." I looked down, only dark blue water, reflecting the gray sky. Nothing. About an hour later, the wind changed direction. It was suddenly strangely calm. The water was still. The boat did not move. The air seemed to thicken. From far away, in the middle of the lake, came a soft explosion, like a large bubble bursting. We turned to look, but saw nothing. Then the water around the boat suddenly darkened, as if something was rising from below. Hunter said, "There must be a cold water vein." But the water there was more than 80 meters deep. There couldn't be such a strong current. I bent down close to the lake. In the dark water, I saw a faint, slow-moving, winding strip of light, like a strip of reflective metal. It circled the boat and disappeared. Neil took out his phone to take a picture, but it wouldn't turn on. "Is the battery dead?" I asked. He shook his head. "I charged it. It just turned off." At that moment, the boat's engine died. Hunter tried to restart it, but to no avail. We all looked at each other, only hearing the sound of water lapping against the side. I turned on my portable radio, turned on the rescue signal. All I could hear was static and something very small, like a whisper. The language was unclear. I thought it was interference, but Neil snatched the radio from me and held it to his ear. He trembled, then said, "They're calling our name." I was about to tell him he had misheard when suddenly the radio got louder. The whispering merged into a male voice, hoarse and broken, speaking slowly. "Keep quiet." Then it stopped. Hunter swore, picked up the oars, and told me to head for shore. But when I looked around, the shore had disappeared. We were surrounded by a thick gray mist, so thick that we couldn't see more than 10 meters. I held up the compass. The needle was spinning, not stopping. Neil suddenly stood up, looking straight out into the mist. He said, "I see them." I asked who. He didn't answer. He bent down, reaching into the water, as if trying to touch something. Hunter pulled back. "Are you crazy?" But Neil's hand was cold. He mumbled, "It's bright down there." Then he fell in. We heard the sound of water, but no waves. Hunter jumped after him. I grabbed his shirt, but missed. We both disappeared at the same time. I screamed, looked around. There was nothing but fog, and the wind suddenly returned, roaring through metal speakers. The boat spun around, the water rising. I grabbed the side, trying to restart the engine. It was no use. The radio came back on, this time with only one sound: the slow drag of a fishing line rubbing against a metal pipe, repeating, drag, release, drag, release. I don't remember how I got to shore. When I woke up, I was lying on the sand by the lake. It was dark. The boat stuck half on shore, half in the water. There was no sign of Neil or Hunter. There was a long, wet handprint on the side of the boat, clearly imprinted with 3 fingers. 3 days later, the search team found Hunter's body nearly 2 kilometers from the south shore. His body had no traces of drifting, as if it had been placed there. He still held the fishing rod in his hand, the line still taut. As for Neil, never found. The police concluded, missing due to an accident on the lake. But when they salvaged my boat, there was a strange detail. The entire metal under the side of the boat had black, perfect circular burns, as if welded with an electrode. They said it could have been lightning, but there was no storm that day. I never returned to Ravens Point, but someone else did. The following year, a group of young men went fishing there at night. They reported that at midnight, they saw a blue light in the water, floating around their boat, and heard a radio saying over and over again, "Keep quiet." They left the lake shortly after. I am 63 years old now. Whenever I hear the water lapping against the pier, I still remember that morning in 2015, the engine dying, the fog rising, and the voice somewhere in the water. I don't know how I survived. Maybe the lake let me go. But sometimes, on rainy nights, when I sit alone at the fishing dock, I hear that sound, soft, steady, very far away, like the sound of a fishing line being pulled through a pulley. Pull, release, pull, release. And if I put my ear close to the water, I swear I can still hear Neil's voice, very small, echoing from the depths. It's very bright down there. I'm not telling this to scare anyone. I'm telling this because, from that day until now, every time I close my eyes, I can still see the fog drifting by, and hear the sound of the oars tapping against the side of the boat, 3 steady, slow strokes, as if someone were still rowing somewhere, in that white fog. That fishing trip took place on a fall morning in 1999, at Lake Clelelum, Washington State. My friend Jack Ellery, my cousin Connor, 3 ordinary men, fishing like everyone else. I remember it clearly. Saturday, October 16. It was cold but beautiful. The lake was flat, reflecting the snow-capped Cascade Mountains in the distance. We left the shore at 6 in the morning. The lake water was so still that you could hear the sound of the fishing line gliding through the air. Jack brought an old tape recorder to record the water, saying he would listen to it when we get home. I laughed and said, "It's just the wind and the fish. What's the point of recording it?" As we reached the middle of the lake, the sun began to rise, a pale yellow light filtering through the thin mist, illuminating the water like broken glass. Connor, only 23, was always a talkative man. He talked about his marriage next year, about the house he was about to buy, about his father wanting him to go back to college. I remember saying, "Let's enjoy today, don't think too much." I wish I hadn't said that. Around 8 o'clock, the mist thickened. The hills seemed to disappear in the distance. We continued anchoring, fishing as usual. The bait sank into the clear water, reflecting the faint light. I had just lit a cigarette when I heard Jack say softly, "Have you seen the color of the water change?" I looked. The color was strange, a deep blue turning to lead. Small, bubble-like dots of light floated on the surface, but they dissipated when touched. Connor bent down and gently poked at them. One of the dots stuck to his fingertip, glowed a faint yellow, then went out. He laughed and said, "Like a firefly in the water." A few minutes later, the wind changed direction. The sound of the waves was unusual, as if they were being reflected from many directions. The fog was so thick that we could only see each other within a few meters. Jack told me to turn on the radio to check the weather forecast. I turned on the navigation channel, only to hear static. Then suddenly, amid the static, a voice, vague and distorted, "Don't let them call your name." I turned it off. All three of us were silent. Jack laughed, saying it was probably a stray signal. But then Connor suddenly whispered, "Did you hear someone say Connor?" I froze. "No one called," I said. "It must have been an echo." But he insisted, "Yes, from behind, clearly." I turned around. There was only a white mist, so thick that the light turned to a gray streak. In the mist, I heard a light tap on the hull. 3 beats, stop, then 3 more. Jack quickly picked up the oar and tapped back 3 times. A moment later, the sound answered also 3 times. But it sounded very far away, very low, as if from underwater. "It could be an echo," Jack said, but I could see his hand shaking as he spoke. We decided to start the engine and leave the area. The engine ran for a while, then died. Jack bent down to check. "The engine is fine, but the fuel isn't burning," he said. "It's like there's water in there." I asked, "How is that possible?" He just looked at me, then down at the lake. Connor sat still, eyes wide. I asked him what was wrong. He said, "I saw someone in the water." "What?" "Right under the boat." I bent down with him. Under the black water, there was indeed something moving. A human figure. Arms, legs, hair. I could see the face. It was Connor. Another Connor, eyes open, looked up at me from the bottom. I backed away, my heart almost stopping. Connor fell, his hands clutching the edge of the boat. Jack pulled him back, but the water swelled, and a pale hand emerged, gripping Connor's arm, pulling him down. Jack yelled, "Hold it!" But in a second, he disappeared under the water, without a sound. The water leveled out again. Jack and I looked at each other, speechless. Everything was dead silent. The radio came on again. A deep, distorted male voice, enunciating each word slowly. "No one. Let them call your name." Jack swung the radio and threw it into the lake. It fell softly, then stopped. He turned to me hoarsely, "Let's go." He started the engine, and strangely enough it started. The boat moved slowly, but it moved. We headed for shore. The fog was so thick that only the headlights could be seen. About 5 minutes later, Jack stopped, stunned. "What's wrong?" I asked. He didn't answer. I followed his gaze and saw another small boat drifting in the mist, about 30 meters away from us. 2 people were on it, one sitting, one standing, both wearing dark life jackets. I waved, but they didn't respond. Their boat drifted slowly, then turned sideways, parallel to us. Jack shouted, "Connor?" One of them turned. Yes, it was Connor. His face was pale, his eyes wide open, water running from his hair to his shoulders. Next to him was a man with silver hair, wearing a torn life jacket, his skin purple. Both looked at us, saying nothing. Jack jerked the wheel. Our boat spun around, hitting the waves. I fell, hitting my head on the wall. When I looked up, the other boat was gone. I woke up late in the afternoon, the boat drifting freely near the shore. The wind had died down, the fog had receded. Jack was sitting in the bow, his back to me. I called, but no answer. When I got closer, I saw that his collar was soaked, and in his hand, he held a piece of fishing line, the end of which was hooked by a rusty iron hook, from which hung a torn piece of cloth and orange life jacket. I touched his shoulder. He was as cold as ice. Jack was no longer breathing. I started the engine and brought the boat to shore. When I reached the shore, I saw no one else. The search party arrived the next day. They found Jack's body, but not Connor's. Cle Elum Lake was deep and cold, and the divers gave up after going down 40 meters. No one touched the bottom. The police concluded accident due to weather, dense fog, and disorientation. But they could not explain why my boat's engine was still running when the fuel tank was full of water. And they couldn't explain why the tape on Jack's recorder, when recovered, contained only one line. A crackling sound, the sound of water, then a hoarse, distant male voice, repeated 4 times. Don't let them call your name. I live in Olympia now. I don't fish anymore. I still have that rusty hook as evidence. Sometimes on foggy mornings I take it out on the porch, listen to the wind, and think I've misheard, but no. There are 3 slow taps on the metal railing, like someone rowing somewhere in the white mist, calling my name very softly. Matt, Matt. I never answer.